The question I will answer today is, what are the Buddhist principles in raising children? This is a question which is a bit odd perhaps for a monk to talk about at first glance, because most of the time monks do have the image not to raise children. But it should be mentioned that many monks do have experience in taking care of young monks, especially if those Buddhist monks live in Asia, where it's tradition for young children to ordain, at least temporarily, in a monastery for 1 month or something like that. So I do have some experience in taking care of children. Of course, my advice must be seen as coming from a monastic perspective to some extent. But I think it's useful to mention this topic. Raising children is not an easy job, and we could talk about it for hours, but I do have limited time now. I think it's very important from a Buddhist perspective that we emphasize the aspect of spiritual education. Because what I've noticed in the present day in the West, we tend to emphasize more and more the education in terms of going to school, going to university, make sure your children get a good education. And perhaps some parents also would like to try to teach some values to their children. That is something important, but I like to emphasize that apart from the worldly aspect of making sure that your children go to school and make sure they manage themselves through a good career, it's also very important that you learn to teach your children certain ethics. In a Buddhist perspective, our ethics is mostly emphasizing not to inflict suffering on oneself and others, which also includes things like teaching your children from a young age to abstain from alcohol and cigarettes, for example. These duties are very important for parents to make sure that your children have good ethical principles, good moral principles. But it's also important for the children to dare to do good. It's also important for your children to dare to give to the poor, to dare to give to a good cause, to do good things. That is important very much. And then there are other duties that are emphasized in Buddhism, for example, to give advice to your children on their worldly education, as I mentioned before, or to give advice on relationship, married life, and finally also, of course, to give your heritage to the children. But most importantly, that's something that never should be overlooked, is to teach education in terms of spiritual and moral values to your children.
Thank you.